Hi everyone, this is Lynn Fairchild-Hawkes here presenting for eStudies, the Identifying the Skill Objectives of your course, or also known as the Why. So you need to identify skills for your course, and your contract deliverable is to identify clear skill objectives that scaffold through week 7 of your course. The question is, what do we mean by clear, and what do we mean by scaffolding? Well, simply, and this Russian doll image is sort of emblematic of how we think of macro and micro. Big skills inside which are housed little skills. And if you start thinking right away about relationship among your skills, that there's an order and a hierarchy, it's going to really help you and your students with terms of mastery and what they accomplish by the end of the term. So as a macro skill, for example, you might be thinking about, let's say you had a science course and you say, I want to do this cool project where students design a study to investigate causes of illness outbreaks at a state fair. Well, that's a big macro skill. That's the big doll. Inside it could be housed any number of skills that you want to focus on, such as students being able to distinguish between independent and dependent variables, or distinguishing between precision and accuracy, calculating statistical attributes of a data set, etc. So you get the idea. There's a lot of micro inside the macro. Or in a writing course, or any course where you're teaching logical reasoning and the art of supporting claims with that and relevant evidence. Look at all the micro skills that you might choose to focus on within, such as the knowledge skill of identifying what an actual claim looks like, logical reasoning, what does that look like? Higher level skill of analysis and evaluation, being able to distinguish between a logical and illogical claim. Or the synthesis, another high level skill. So how do you actually develop a logically reasoned claim supported by relevant evidence? So what we're really asking you to do when you select skills are helping students define and do and create real-world work. And you're putting them in the role of the discipline. What do historians do? What do diplomats, epidemiologists, filmmakers? And on those higher levels of skill, analysis, creation, synthesis, evaluation. The upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy. That's where you want the students to hang out. That's the type of macro and micro skill that you are having them pursue and practice and hopefully master by end of term. So you're creating specific actions that practitioners of the discipline can do while they solve problems in the course. And you're going to be stating these objectives using verbs, Bloom's verbs, usually beginning with things that are a synonym of or a subset of analysis, synthesis, and creating and evaluating. So when in doubt, you let it bloom. You go to Bloom's taxonomy. You look at these different types of verbs, and you choose those high-level verbs. We have a document that we think would be really helpful for you to use, and it's from St. Edward's University. It has all kinds of great synonyms that you can use, build synonyms off of as you are picking the verbs that you want to use for your skill objectives. So you'll find that within our PD module to use. And here are just also a quick look at some of those synonyms. If you are talking about having students do analysis, you might also use explain, categorize, distinguish, etc. If you're looking for synonyms for synthesis or creation verbs, create, suggest, propose, develop, invent, etc. Likewise, evaluation. We have great synonyms here that you might use. Evaluate, select, choose, defend, decide, judge, etc. So where we're headed with this is once you've picked your skill objectives, they're also going to be reused as success criteria for rubrics. In other words, the standards, the levels at which students are going to hopefully perform. So you build those skill objectives, they end up on rubrics as criteria that you'll use for judging the products and performances. They tell you, these verbs do, as success criteria, what quality looks like when the students perform the task or the product or the performance. And each week of eStudies, there should be some core assignment, whether formative, whether summative, that has a rubric with success criteria informed by those skill objectives you set. So in preterm, as you're developing a course, first of all, you identify your macro and micro skills. You're also going to be developing 2 summative assessments for the 7-week term, and then any number of preparatory formative assessments to help students get to that summative, that culminating assessment, where they are demonstrating one or more of these skills. And then, of course, you're going to create rubrics that reflect those skills, where you're repurposing those skill objectives as success criteria. And in the eStudy speak of the Canvas learning management system we use, those success criteria are also known as outcomes. So here's a quick peek of what an instructor would see who's using a rubric that you've created based on outcomes. And you can see that the outcomes, which we are just calling simple things like writing prompt outcome, discussion outcome, quiz outcome, etc. You might use, obviously, much more specific terminology. Well, students might be getting any level of success on that. And if you look at the color code on the right-hand side, a darker green is exceeding mastery, a lighter green is meets mastery, a yellow is near mastery, and a red is well below mastery. So at any point, after having graded the student's product or performance using the success criteria, aka skill objectives that you've developed, then the instructor can at a glance see within Canvas who's at red, who's at yellow, who's at light green, who's at dark green. So it's a wonderful tool to get a lot of data all at once based on the rubrics, which are based on this actual skill objectives. So real quick, just some common misunderstandings that people sometimes have when they're developing a course. Sometimes they really say, you know, oh, it's all about the content, so the bigger the textbook I use or the resource, the better, and so therefore let that stuff lead, and then I'll figure out later what the skills are. And as I develop skills, you know, let me just keep them super macro, they can be super general, we'll kind of figure it out as we go along, and teachers will figure it out while they're grading. Well, actually, what we believe in eStudies is the content should not be the leader. The skills should be. Those will be the primary thing you start with, and that skill language should not only be highly specific, but we believe that when it comes to assessment and learning, students don't know what we want until we tell them our learning intentions. And that's those skill objectives, that success criteria. And we also need to offer them models and samples of what quality work looks like, so they really understand where they're headed. So in the end, the instructor who takes your course, whether it's you or someone else later as we offer more sections, the assessment in real time will be so much more efficient and more meaningful if you, on this development end, are clarifying why you're assigning that task, what is that objective, how is it relevant to the real world of work, what are the outcomes for students on this, as specifically as you can imagine them at this stage. So as you work, you know, these are things, these are essential questions that are driving your design work. Do I understand the relationship among all the skills I want to teach in my course? What are the macro ones? What are the micro ones? What's the best order for learning them? So do I need to consolidate some of them? Are they kind of, am I being redundant in some places? Do I need to raise some to a higher level, subordinate others? What's my macro-micro plan? That definitely takes some thinking. That's not just something that just sort of pops out of your head. And then thinking about gifted 8th graders and 9th graders. How much time is it going to take those kids to explore these in depth? And knowing that, you know, we may say they're 8th and 9th graders, but they're heterogeneous, and you might have in a class a few 11th or 10th graders as well scattered throughout. It's crucial you know the layers, because some kids will need to skip them who are 8th graders, and some won't who are 11th graders. And others may need to spend some time returning to a micro skill that other kids already know. So that's why it's so great to break them down level by level. Less is always more. Really, you're asking yourself another essential question, which is what's really necessary? It's really okay to have only 3 macro skills for a 7-week term, because assuming that the macro hides several other skills and that you've picked just a few, then spend quality time splitting apart each macro one to find all the micro. And think about the luxury we have in this program. There's no transcript requirements that after the student exits the class, they're trying to place out of some other class because of this. That's not what our goal is. We are enrichment. We don't have state or national standards that we have to meet, though some state and national standards are wonderful guidelines that you can use and grab and repurpose in the exercise we've talked about of the macro-micro. You don't have to rush through content and skill. Just in time, students can learn the content instead of just in case. So really, when you think about the bits and bytes of knowledge they need to have, what is stuff they need to know just in time to master a skill, not just in case they need it someday to know it. The rigor is really based on this macro-micro understanding, and it allows us to challenge multiple students at multiple levels. So this is your task going forward. Select 3 to 4 macro skills that you believe students in your eStudies course will show mastery of by the end of the 7-week term. And then try, as you select these 3 to 4, reduce the number of skills you'll teach while thinking critically about the many micro skills that are embedded in them. And of course, we're here to help. You've got an academic coordinator, you've got main office staff that you can reach out to, and we'd be glad to help. Thanks.